Hello.
Hello.
Hey everyone, thank you for joining today. We will begin in another 25 minutes. Thank you for your patience.
Hi to everybody who's already joined us. We will be starting in about 5 minutes, so just hang on in there whilst we get going, and feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat or anything like that whilst we wait. Right, I think we are good to go. It's 10 o'clock, well, 10 a.m. BST where I am. So, hello everybody. Welcome to the very first One Ocean Action webinar. You're in for a real treat. We've got some awesome 2 hours coming up, and I'm really excited to hear the presenters and speakers we have today. Just to quickly introduce myself, my name is Joe Wilkins. I'm the Conventions and Policy Officer at Reserve of the Youth Land Trust. For those who don't know, Reserve is a youth-led organization that is working to empower young people through three main channels: storytelling, education, and most notably, direct conservation action through the creation of our youth-led network, youth-led nature reserves around the world. But why am I here? Reserve is a member of the Youth for Our Planet Steering Committee. Made up of regional and national chapters, Youth for Our Planet is truly an incredible organization, but I'm going to hand over to my two fellow hosts to say a little bit more about Youth for Our Planet and a little bit more about the work that they're doing related to oceans today. So, Sakshi, I think you're next.
Hey everyone, I am Sakshi M. Krishna. I am one of the regional mobilizers for Asia Pacific Youth for Our Planet, and I'm from India. We are the global youth movement for our planet, and we are calling upon world leaders to take action for nature, the climate, and the oceans. We are a group of we have mobilizers from all over the world, and we are very extensive in our efforts, and we constantly are working towards bringing about action, urgent action, calling upon the governments and stakeholders, and calling upon for accountability. So we've also recently come up with a Youth Ocean Declaration that will give you insights about the high seas. It also talks about the maintenance of the health of the ocean, and it also talks about how important that we act right now. So to join Youth for Our Planet, we would request all of you to use the link www.youthforourplanet.com/join our movement, and also you can also read the declaration on www.youthforourplanet.com/ocean declaration.
Hello everyone, I'm Sahara Lama, and I am one of the country mobilizer of Youth for Our Planet Nepal, and we are your host for today's webinar. Welcome.
Great. So there's three of us hosting. Perhaps, Sakshi, could we move to the next slide just to give people a taste of what's happening today in the next 2 hours? It's quite a jam-packed 2 hours with quite a lot going on. We've got 5 great sessions, chance for some Q&A, little breaks, little games. So please do engage throughout, and save any questions for any of the panelists. We've got a great lineup. And yeah, it promises to be an exciting 2 hours. Could we just go to the next slide, please, Sakshi? I can quickly just do the safeguarding and housekeeping rules. So if you aren't speaking, because we're in a Zoom webinar, it's a little bit different, but if you aren't speaking, do just please make sure your microphone is off so that we don't get any feedback or noise coming through. The sessions will be recorded for those who aren't comfortable with camera, but again, this is a webinar, so it's slightly different, but we've still got to cover these things. But as many of you are doing already, please do keep using the chat to introduce yourselves, say where you're from, ask questions, use this as an opportunity to talk to fellow conservationists and young environmentalists from around the world who care about the oceans as well. So this is your chance as well to get something away from this session. So I guess without further ado, if Sakshi or Sahara, you haven't got anything to add to this quick intro, we can go to the first presenter.
Absolutely. I think we can move forward with our first session of the day.
Right.
Yes.
So wait, I'm gonna.
I'd like to call upon. No, sorry. Go ahead.
You go, Sakshi. Sorry. Oh, I just want to welcome our first speaker, Dr. Francis Okasoro. who is a field ornithologist with extensive experience in research in farmland birds in West Africa, biodiversity conservation, and ecotourism development. He is the president and founder of Global Birds Conservation Initiative and the first Nigerian to institute an NGO on avian species conservation. He is the head of Department of Agroforestry and Ecotourism at Leventis Foundation Nigeria Agricultural Training School. He has recently joined the International Primatology Group that found a few numbers of red-belly guenon in Nigeria. Dr. Francis Okasoro has over 50 publications in local and international journals and conference proceedings. Dr. Francis, please take the floor, and we look forward to your presentation.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. I'm Dr. Francis, as I said. I hope you are seeing me.
Yeah, we can hear and see you okay.
Share my PowerPoint on your pen so I can continue.
Actually, are we able to put up the PowerPoint?
Yes, I'm just trying to get the PowerPoint.
No, yeah, no worries. In the meantime, as we've just said in the chat, do keep introducing yourselves throughout this and save any questions you may have for any of our panelists as well.
I'm Dr. Francis Okasoro from Nigeria, a conservationist, and I'm another activist in climate change and ocean management. I've done some specific courses in Conserve in ocean life ecosystem and climate change. And climate change, and I'm training the youth to know what it means to conserve the nature. And in particular, let me start my waste management. That's what I'm going to talk about. This continuous body of salt water and covers about 70% of the earth. And when something covers about 61%, which means the rest 30% is what of the human being or the people, the human being, the animals acquire, which means it's very, very important to man. We have the next slide, please. We have about 5 oceans in the world: the Pacific, the Atlantic, the Arctic oceans, and the Arctic and Atlantic oceans. The 5 oceans has covered 61.9 million kilometers.
Dr. Francis, sorry to interrupt you, but your voice is breaking up a little.
This one shows the okay. This shows that this one is the distance, the volume of each ocean in the world. The Pacific Ocean is the largest, is the longest and the largest in the world, occupies about 30% of the world ocean. Let's go the next slide. The benefits of world ocean. Food. More than 3.5 billion people depend on the ocean from their primary source of food. Fish supply the greatest percentage of the world today consumed by humans. Fresh water, the ocean of the world play a major role in the fresh water cycle. It forms the cloud, it brings us rain, which replemenish our fresh water supplies. Climate regulation. Ocean strongly affect climate and weather patterns, transferring heat and moderating carbon dioxide levels in the atmosphere. Economy. Ocean-related industries such as fishing, tourism, transportation provide indispensable revenue in the US alone. It produced about 128 billion US in their GDP. Medicine. Have a pick of the label of your bedroom cabinet. You will be surprised at the plethora of biomedical products derived from the marine plants and animal sources. Marine intelligence have numerous medical health benefits. Marine organisms contribute to many critical processes that have direct and indirect effects on the health of the oceans and humans. Primary and secondary production are important mechanisms by which marine communities contribute to global processes. Spiritual tourism in Nigeria is the leading spiritual tourism center in the world. Ocean is just meant for spiritual tourism in Africa, in Nigeria. If you go to any of the beaches now, you will see that most of them churches are set up to pray. Muslims are there to pray. So it is just a lot of people flock to the beach for spiritual tourism. Richard, let's go to the next slide. Marine biodiversity. Marine biodiversity is an agitation of highly interconnected ecosystem components or features comprising all levels of biological organization, from genes, species, populations to ecosystem, with the diversity of each level having structural, functional attributes. There are about 228,450 known species in the ocean. As many as 2 billion, more than 2 million more than that remain total a mystery. 2 million species have not been named in the ocean. Ocean contains the largest living volume of the blue planet. Habited by approximately 235,250 described as species group included. Duly represented some 13% of the known species of the earth, but the marine biomass are really huge. Marine phytoplankton alone represent half of the production of organic matter on earth, while marine bacteria represent more than 10%. Facts and figures of the next slide, please. Facts and figures of marine biodiversity. The ocean contains over 90% of the habitable space of the planet. The ocean has a much higher phytogenetic diversity of 30% of fauna and exclusively marine, where only phylum is exclusively terrestrial. By the year 2100, without significant changes, more than half of the world's marine species may stand on the brink of extinction. Today, 60% of the world's major marine ecosystem that underpin the livelihood of being degraded are being used unsustainably. Marine protected areas, MPAs, are essential to conserve the biodiversity of the ocean, to maintain the productivity, especially of fish stocks. World Heritage Marine Sites represented in surface 1/3 of the marine protected areas. Approximately 12% of the land area is protected, compared to roughly 1% of the world ocean adjacent area. Ocean acidification may threaten the plankton which is key to the survival of live fish. If the concentration of atmospheric CO2 is continuing to carbon dioxide increases of the current rate, the ocean will become corrosive. Increase to the shares of many marine organisms by the end of this century. How or if marine organisms may adapt it is not known. Ocean acidification may render most regions of the ocean inhospitable to coral reefs, affecting tourism, food security, shoreline protection, and biodiversity. Corals are the nodules of the ocean. They are biodiversity hotspots. Some of the tropical reefs, for example, there can be 1,000 species per 1 meter square. Fish provide 15% of the dietary intake of any animal protein. Commercial exploitation of the world fish stock is so severe that it has been estimated that up to 13% of the global fisheries have collapsed. Agricultural practice, coastal tourism, port and harbor development, demanding of damming rivers, urban development and construction, mining, fishery, aquaculture, and manufacturing, among others, all sources of marine pollution threatening coastal and marine habitats. There are close to 500,000 dead zones covering more than 245,000 kilometers square, globally equivalent to the surface of the United Kingdom. Coastal systems such as mangroves, salt marshes, and some seagrass meadows have the ability to absorb, sequester the carbon, and restate up to 50 times those of the same area of a tropical forest. Total carbon of the coastal system may be up to 5 times the carbon shown on tropical forests. Between 1980 to 2005, 35,000 square kilometers of mangrove were removed globally. Recently, I wrote a book on the damaged ecosystem, mangrove system in Nigeria. Myself and Dr. Sandra from India. And what we saw was amazing. That this 35,000 square kilometers is just an iceberg of what they saw. Nigeria coast mangrove forest is completely written off. It's not damaged. So this play a major role in the ocean. If the ocean is so going to be retained, but it's being destroyed in Nigeria completely. Between 30 and 35% of the global extent of critical marine habitats such as seagrass, mangroves, coral reefs estimated to have been destroyed. Technological change and the emergence of new economic opportunities such as deep sea mining, more intensive fishing, deeper oil and gas drilling increase risks to areas that historically were not under threat. Further research, let me go further. Major ocean basins. We have about some major basins that are conserved. South Pacific Ocean areas include the sea, Sargasso Sea, as well as the Costa Rica Thermal Dam in the Pacific Ocean. The South Thermal Sea, the Emperor Seamount chain, northwest of the Hawaii Islands. The Mascarin Plateau in the Indian Ocean and the West Range undersea mountain range of southwestern, the entry into the ocean by chemical or particles. Many particles combine chemically in the manner highly depletive of the ocean, causing extensive to become anoxic. This article is the consequences and cure marine pollution. 3 different kinds of marine pollution have been categorized: caused through land, caused through air, and caused through means of transportation. What is that? The pollutants from the land, like industrial waste, other waste discharge into sewage, more than untreated waters from the fertilizers, pesticides from agricultural lands that further dispose into the waterways. Daily use of plastic is also contributing to marine pollution. OSPs, neglect of acts of the transporters on the oil have hazardous impact on marine life. Microorganisms and other animals eat the plastic and that as food and die off. 80% of the waste in the ocean is plastic material. That's why I consider it as a threat. If you look at this pie chart, 80% is plastic waste, and which is at a dangerous trend. Over 300 million tons of plastic are produced every year for use in a wide variety of applications in our oceans every year. Make up 80% of debris from surface water to deep sediments. The most visible and disturbing impact of marine plastics are the ingestion, suffocation, entanglement of hundreds of marine species. Marine wildlife such as seabed, waste, fish, turtles, mistakes plastic waste for prey. Stomachs are filled with plastic debris. Impact on food and health. You know, in this area, I'm supposed to, because of the time lag, micro plastics. The micro affect the health and food of the sea species and the health of humans. Invisible plastic has been identified as tap water, beer, salt, and are present in all samples of collected in the world's oceans, including the Arctic. Several chemicals used in the production of plastic materials are known to be carcinogenic and interfere with body endocrine system, causing developmental serious problems. Plastic pollution threatens food safety and quality of human health, coastal tourism, and contribute to climate change. The rate of plastic production has grown faster than that of any other materials in the world. More than half of single-use plastics are recognized as being one of the most noticeable pollutants affecting the ocean worldwide. Recent studies have suggested that approximately 8.3 billion tons of plastics are accumulated since the early 50s, 79% of which has ended up either disposal sites or in natural environment. About 8 million tons of plastic came from deep inner areas, end up in the ocean. Top of the estimate is 150 million tons that currently circulate marine environment. The total municipal waste generated in Asia and the Pacific was estimated to about 870 million tons in 2014. One average generation rate of 1.4 kilometers per 3% of the world to that tons. This figure is expected to be 1.4 billion tons rate of 1.6 kilometers per hour, 1.6 kg per hour per person per day in 2030. While the organic component comprises highest portion of the composition of municipal waste, accounting for 57% in low and middle countries. Marine leakage. Most of the marine leakages are from the inland through the rivers. And through the rivers, because the local government system in most countries, in low-income countries, are dead. They are not working. That is the major cause of that. Because most of the rivers are not clean. You dump your waste anywhere you want to dump it. The measures of marine plastic are land for urban, storm runoff, severe waste disposal, management, industrial activities, construction, and illegal dumping. Ocean-based plastic originates mainly from the fishing industries, nautical activities, and aquaculture. But the ocean-based, the most important one is that human dump the waste, plastic waste anywhere. You cannot. They don't have a system of recycling in Africa. Recycling it's just start in Africa. But in other countries, in developed countries, they have the ability to recycle most of their waste and their plastic waste. That is why they have America generates the highest of plastic waste in the world, but nearly all the plastic waste are recycled.
Dr. Francis, I think
plastic waste is recycled. In Asia and Africa, it is not true.
Dr. Francis,
it's not true.
Am I audible?
Yes, you're audible.
Your
Yes.
voice is.
I'm hearing you.
Your voice is breaking up a lot. I think there is a problem with your internet connection. We could probably move forward with the next session, and we can once you try to fix your internet, we can come back to your presentation. Does that sound okay?
It's okay.
Thank you so much for your time, Doctor. To all the participants, we will be sharing the presentation that Dr. Francis has shared with all of you for your reference, and we apologize for the technical difficulties.
Shall we do a quick quiz, Sakshi, to see how people's ocean knowledge before we move on to the next speaker?
Yes. We now have a fun activity planned ahead for all of you. We have a quiz. We request all of you to participate in the quiz through the Mentimeter. That is, the link will be shared with you on the chat section. Menti.com. And you can answer the quiz right here. Just a second. The Menti, log on to the www.menti.com and please enter the code that is visible on your screens right now. What is the deepest point in the ocean?
And we have the following options: Philippine Trench, the Mariana Trench, Puerto Rico Trench, and finally Japan Trench. And the correct answer is the Mariana Trench.
Okay, we still have participants answering the question.
Okay.
I hope nobody gets it wrong now. That'll be quite funny now that they've heard the answer. But yes, I believe, I could be wrong, it's over 11,000 meters deep or close to that, which is deeper than Mount Everest is tall. So if you were to bury Mount Everest at the bottom of the Mariana Trench, you would still have quite a lot of space above it of water, which is quite a cool thing to think about.
Yeah.
I apologize if my numbers are wrong, but it's around 11,000 meters anyway, deep, somewhere around there.
All right, we'll move on to the next question.
Okay, so the second question is, which ocean does the Amazon River run into? Where does the Amazon River flow into the sea? So we've got the Antarctic Ocean, the Pacific Ocean, the Atlantic Ocean, or the North Atlantic Ocean. So feel free to, obviously the Amazon is the world's largest river based on just discharge and amount of water. So this is quite a feat, and I don't know if we have anybody from Brazil or joining from anywhere near the mouth of the. Oh, I probably just gave the answer away. I apologize. From the, I was making conversation. This is what happens. I just ramble. If anybody would like to share anything about the mouth of the Amazon River, I hear it's a very impressive sight. There's like islands the size of countries inside of it. It's very impressive. And there's so much water going out into the ocean. I'm not saying which ocean, but apparently the water is quite fresh for hundreds of miles from the coast, which is quite impressive. But
Okay, I think it's time for us to announce the correct answer of this question before we go into more details and giving away the answer.
Well, it is correct. It is the Atlantic Ocean. So flowing from Brazil in northeast Brazil. So yeah, it is the Atlantic Ocean. So well done, people who've answered that one. Perhaps we should. Do you want to move on to the next speaker, just because I'm conscious of time running over, or happy to do another quick question? Up to you.
All right, we'll just finish this question and then move on to the next speaker, if that's all right with everyone. Yeah. How many marine species are harmed by plastic pollution? 52, 693, 130, 1,326, 5,489. What could be the answer? Great. I see a lot of people answering 693, and yes, you guys are right. The answer is 693. And yeah, that was the end of our quiz. I hope all of you had fun in that. I'd like to move on with the next session for the webinar. The next speaker is Adu Mensah Jr. He is the founder of Youth Legacy Ghana, which is also a youth-driven organization advocating for education, climate, and biodiversity. He is a climate activist and a conservation actor who advocates for sustainable biodiversity, greening urban regions, plastic-free marine, and sustainable urban transformation. He is also a researcher at the National Development Planning Commission, Ghana. Mr. Adu has been a youth speaker, writer, and a policy reviewer at African Youth SDG Summit, IPBES, and UNEP MGCY. Welcome, Mr. Adu.
I don't think we can hear you. I don't think the mic is working, or at least I can't hear you, unless somebody else can.
No, Mr. Adu, I think you're speaking on mute.
Can you hear now?
Yeah, we can hear you now. Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so may you proceed with the slides?
Yeah.
So while we wait for the slides to load, I would like to commend Dr. for his wonderful presentation. It's been very, very educative, and I hope to proceed from that angle. So my name is Edumense Junior, and I need no further introduction. So please, can you proceed to the next slide? So we are going to go have an overview of the entire presentation. Number one, we are going to talk about oceans and plastics. And under that, we are going to look at, may you proceed with the slides? So under our first objectives, you are going to know some facts about the world oceans and plastic waste. In our second objective, we are going to, please may you proceed for me? So we are going to look at marine life, and under marine life, we look at the types of marine life and the marine ecosystem. And in our third presentation, we are going to look at marine littering. And under that, we are going to look at the causes of marine litter, the threats posed by marine litter, and mitigating marine litter. And in the fourth presentation of this entire presentation, we are going to look at the frameworks and the strategies that governments and institutions are adopting to curb marine litter and marine pollution. And after we look at some recommendations from scholars. So let's proceed, get into the first slide. So about the world oceans, you know, the ocean is the greatest gift that humankind we could ever have from nature or from the one who made the world. The oceans cover over 70% of the entire lithospheric layer, and so the ocean is far larger than the continental crust. So the way we live as human is smaller, but the impact we are making on the ocean, which has the largest portion of the earth, goes away to affect us back. In our second insight, we are looking at, according to one scholar, he stated that as unsightly as ocean pollution is, what we can see may be worse. 70% of ocean garbage actually sinks to the ocean floor, meaning we are unlikely to be able to clean it up. Thus, when you look at the entire ocean, the amount of pollution or the amount of litter or the waste that we channel into our oceans, they are more than those that goes into the seafloor, they are more than the ones that we see at the sea surface. Most of the debris that we let it go into the underwater oceanic places, especially in the deep ocean shelves, they are more than the ones that lies in the benthic and the photic zones of our ocean. And the next one is that over 8 million metric tons of waste are dumped into the ocean each year. This is very, very important for us to know that we dump almost 8 million metric tons, between 5.3 million to 8 million metric tons of plastic waste into the ocean each year. And this number of plastics that we generate into the ocean, it is more than it weighs like 5,200 blue whales. Blue whale is the largest animal, the largest organism that lies in the ocean, and we are releasing over 5,200 blue whales into the ocean each year, and we are affecting the lives of organisms that lives in the ocean. The next one is the double danger of plastic. With the double danger of plastic, he says that marine plastic debris takes over 400 years to degrade, which can further contaminate and the marine food chain, causing harm to marine life. So whenever plastic is being sent into the marine environment, it takes over 400 years to degrade. That is the least of them all, takes over 400. And after degrading, it goes up to affect the marine food chain, which thereby have an implication on marine life. The next one is that there is a growing trend of photic zone in the Dead Seas. And when we talk about the hyphoxic zone, it is the place of where there is no oxygen, where marine animals cannot strive or cannot live. And there is a growing trend of these hyphoxic zones in the oceans, where whenever animals or marine animals move into these places, it affects their life and they become dead. And there is a growing number from 7 to 8. And in Texas, they have the largest size of these hyphoxic zones. The next one is that plastic waste are more predominant in Indonesia and China, and they account for about 30% of marine pollution. So we are going to also look at population factor in terms of ocean, marine littering in oceans. Areas with high population tend to generate a lot of waste, and they are not making any amicable means to reduce the number of waste that they generate into the oceans. And these are some of the facts that we have to know about the world and how we are affecting the marine environment. Please, the next slide. So in the next session, we are going to look at the marine life. I want you to know that the major influencer of the marine ecosystem is the availability of sunlight. Whenever it is sunny or whenever the moon dawns, that is when fishes are able to catch a lot of fishes. And it is the major influencer of the marine ecosystem. Thus, the availability of sunlight determines where organisms are going to live. Is it either the planktons or either the plants and algae or the marine invertebrates and the marine vertebrates? All of these strive within portions of the oceans, and they are able to strive there because of the availability of sunlight. An overview of the marine ecosystem or the marine organisms. The least of all, or the smallest of all, is the zooplanktons. The zooplanktons are part of the planktons family, and they serve as the source of food for most fishes. And some fishes start as planktons before they move to become salmons or whatever fishes they become. Planktons are numerous microscopic organisms that inhabit the pelagic environment in the marine environment. They are important for the marine food chain organisms, especially for organisms in the benthos. Or when we talk of the benthos, we are talking of some of the upper layers. Whenever we demarcate or when we look at the zonation of the ocean, those organisms that live in the benthic, they feed on planktons. Oh no, please, let's go back there. Please, let's go back there. And also, we can also look at the plants and algae. They are also a part of organisms that live within the benthic zones of the marine environment. And we talk of the marine invertebrates. We are talking of animals such as the octopi, the sea anemones, the starfish, the slugs, the clams, the crabs, and the lobsters. And most of these organisms live within the benthic and the nekton zones of the ocean. Also, we have the marine vertebrates, and the marine vertebrates consist of all kinds of fishes, such as the salmon, the tilapia, those that have vertebrates. They are the organisms, they also live or they feed on the marine vertebrates. Mostly, they also feed on the phytoplanktons and also on the zooplanktons. The next aspect of the marine organisms is the marine reptiles, and we have the sea turtles and the sea water crocodiles. Some of these marine organisms do lay eggs on the land, and after their young ones are coming, they now send them back into the ocean to live there. So we will see that there is a nexus between the land and the ocean when it comes to reptiles. For example, sea turtles in Ghana, you see most of them hatching their eggs along the shoreline, such as we have the Olivacia family of the turtles. Most of them lay their eggs within the shorelines, and hence there is that nexus between the ocean and the land, of which we should be taking into consideration from here as we move on. And also we have the marine birds or the marine mammals. And with the marine mammals, we could talk of the importance of Ramsar sites and wetlands in this context, that they are also part of the marine life. Please, let's move on to the next slide. So to the major focus of the presentation, we are going to look at marine litter, and we are going to have an insight into how marine litter influence these organisms, their livelihood, and their sustenance. Let's move on to some of the causes of marine litter. Okay, so okay, I am part of the UNEP major group for youth and children, and last year we built this framework for the UNYA 75 when UNEP we were presenting on marine litter this year, and this is the framework that we came about to analyze some of the causes of marine litter. The first one is the lack of proper landfill site. In most parts of developing countries, you will see that there is an improper disposal of waste, and most of them tends back to go into the marine environment because of the lack of proper landfill site. It is very, very important that we should know that areas that have, for example, in the Scandinavians, they have a lot of that recycles or segregates waste, but in some developing countries, it is very, very difficult for them to be able to have these proper landfill sites. And because there is an improper landfill site, it leads to improper disposal of waste. And whenever there is improper disposal of waste, it means that the marine environment is going to suffer in the long run. So that is the first cause of marine litter. And also we have the improper sewage treatment mechanisms. You know, most industries that channels their marine debris into the ocean, they do not have the proper mechanism for treating waste. Except these days that some countries like Germany, they are coming with some innovations to quickly segregate and reuse some single-use plastics for other purposes. And if we don't have an end-to-source method whereby places that generate waste are having a proper mechanisms to treat that same waste, but we leave industries, companies, and individuals to quickly channel their waste into the ocean, it is going to cause a lot of marine litter. The next one is the poor individual attitude. This is one of the important causes of marine litter that we should take into consideration. Individual attitude towards the environment, I would say that is very, very appalling, because we all, in one way or the other, have littered the environment. Most people, whenever they, especially beach users, whenever they are done using the beach, they tend to leave the litter that these the single-use plastics that they send to the oceans, they tend to leave them at the beaches, and this increases the chances of marine litter. If you go to use the beach, buy a bottle of water. After taking the bottle of water, you leave it for the beach, for the ocean to take care of itself. It means that we are doing more harm than good to the environment. Thus, our individual attitudes is also a major cause of marine litter. We are the very people that live in the fringes of the coastal environment. And if you are living near the coastal environment, and we tend to pollute or send debris into the marine environment, it means that we are the major factor that causes or poses a lot of harmful threat to the marine environment. I was reading an article, Indonesia, most of the communities that lives around the coastal environment. I read that according to Dr. Lowe and his co-host, they published an article in 2013, and they were insinuating that the individual community believes that when they litter the environment, when it is when a year ends, they go back to the marine environment and clean it up. But they tend to forget that the marine environment is also going to have a trickle effect on them and also on marine life. So our individual and improper disposal of waste is also a cause of marine litter. Another important cause of marine litter is law enforcement and leadership problem. And most countries that do not enact on the enforcement of law that governs the marine environment tend to suffer a lot from marine debris. So it is high time that we start to hold our leaders accountable and start to entrench and enshrine some of the laws that are stated in our various constitutions that governs marine environment. Please, the next slide. So we are going to look at some of the threats that are being posed by marine litter. And it is dual affair, because marine litter harms the environment, and also it harms the marine lives, and also it is having an implication on the human life. We would first take the human livelihood into consideration. The first one is health issues. Whenever we use the beaches, whenever humankind uses beaches and we leave the bottles, broken bottles, nets, and other marine debris, towels, clothing, when we leave these things there, we don't know which person is having an STD or which person is having any kind of health issue. And other people can go into the marine environment and be harmed by these broken bottles. I was walking by the Winnipeg beach in Ghana one time, and I was trying to scoop my hands into the sand. And when I scooped my hands into the sand, I just found a bottle. So imagine that I had trampled on that bottle, I would have injured my leg. So there is an effect, an impact that whenever we litter the marine environment is having on us. We can have a lot of health issues when it comes to that. When people are swimming and they start to bump into bottles, they start to bump into other stuff, it can also affect the human health. Also, the destruction of the aesthetic uses of beaches. Whenever we litter the marine environment, it destroys the physical appearance or the good nature of the marine environment. If you saw some of the pictures that I showed in the earlier slide, you could see that there are a lot of improper disposal of waste, which destroys the aesthetics or the beauty of the beaches. The next one we can talk about is food contamination and water contamination. If you look at the world oceans, most places that have wetlands tend to have a lot of marine pollution. This is because whenever we release waste into the marine environment, the fishes are going to feed on these stuff because they see them as food, they see them as foreign, they see them as things that they can also thrive their lives on. Hence, fishes that eat from microplastics tend to, whenever we catch those fishes from the oceans, they tend to have an effect on us because we go back to the fishes for sustenance, for food. And when we eat them back, it is going to have an implication on our health. And also, when fresh water is being produced from wetlands and peatlands, you see that whenever there is a lot of improper disposal of waste in wetland areas, you see that the water that are in the area is going to be contaminated. And hence, there will be an inability for freshwater usage or from freshwater to be drawn from these important natural freshwater places for community sustenance. Another thing I would like to talk about is the aquatic lives. One of the impacts of marine litter on aquatic life is the dispersal of species, wounds that leads to ulceration, impaired productivity, malnutrition, and impaired growth. There are a lot of pictures, images, and videos that are circulating all these claims. Some of the litter we send into the oceans tend to disperse some of the species. Some tend to wound one or two of the marine organisms, which causes ulcer. Also, some of them, like the nets that catches some fishes that they are unable to grow. You could see some turtles with bottles on their neck, and it has impaired their productivity. And also malnutrition and impaired growth. These are some of the threats that marine litter poses on the marine environment and on our human livelihood. Please, the next slide. So the question that we now ask ourselves is, how can we be able to mitigate marine litter? I would say that it is a secular method that we can be able to. We have to integrate one or more mechanisms to be able to mitigate marine litter. The first one that I go for is research and innovation. With research and innovation, I believe that until we're able to do adequate research and develop the proper tools, the proper technology that can be able to address marine litter, we wouldn't go away to impact the next generation. If you want to stick to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, then it is very, very integral that research and innovation, development of new technologies should be the focus for every nation, for every organization, or every institution that is having interest in mitigating marine litter. Also, there should be an improved waste management. Thus, we should improve our ability to manage waste, because if we tend to channel every waste into the ocean, we can see the lot of harm that we would do to the environment. Another important thing we can do to mitigate marine litter is behavioral and attitudinal change. You and me, we have to change our attitude towards the environment, not only to when we are using beaches, but also in our present homes. In events, I went to one United Nations program in Ghana, and after I was done with the program, they gave me several packages, and I was like, oh, they gave me a water bottle that is plastic. They gave me food in plastic. Everything they gave me was in plastic. Meanwhile, we went there to discuss on reducing plastic in Ghana. And I was like, what the hell are we doing? How best are we helping the environment? If we, the policymakers, if we, the framework developers, are not doing the exact things we are talking about, how do we expect the society who are on land in these things to be able to do that? So that the approach to mitigating marine litter, it starts from you, it starts from me. We have to change our behavior. One or two of us uses the beach. Today, some of us will be going to the beach. When you are going to the beach, are you sending your bottled water that you can reuse, or you are going to buy a new plastic bottle that you throw and leave it at the beach? So we have to change our attitude when it comes to our usage of the marine environment. Also, production restriction. When we are able to restrict some of the industries that improperly dispose their waste into the marine environment, I think that it is one of the important ways that we can reduce marine litter. The next two that I'm going to talk about are very, very delicate. What the littering footprint taxation is an ideology that I've developed in a new paper I'm writing. And with this littering footprint taxation, I am positing that each individual should be held accountable for a litter. That is, as much as you are littering, you should be able to pay for that. It should be I'm developing that framework to be an instant fine that we post on people that litter, especially people that litter in the marine environment. That we will just need some few policy implementers, or you can use the police forces in each country. They go to the beaches at any time. When they see you littering, they give you a spot fine that will deter you from littering in the environment again. Or we can make it an individual footprint taxation. That is, when I see you littering in the environment, the next thing that I do to you is I tax you that you have to pay me a spot fine. And if you're able to do that, paying a spot fine of $50 or $20 will deter you the next time from littering in the environment. The next one that we are talking about is the circular urban economy, or the circular urban metabolism. You see that there is a lot of nexus between the urban area and those that uses the beach, the oceans. Most communities that are within the coastal environment are developed. So there should be what we call the circular urban economy, whereby everything is produced within the urban economy, reused in the urban economy, waste are managed in the urban economy. That is, when it comes to food, food is produced in the urban economy. Food waste are being used for composting, that also yield food back into the urban economy. And also, when you talk of plastic waste, when we are done using plastic, there should be that mechanism that we will collect plastics or single-use plastics, recycle them for other products. And if you look at on YouTube, there is this guy called the Brothers IXY. They are recycling a lot of products all over the world. And we can check on them whenever you go to YouTube. Please, the next slide. I think my time is almost up. So in conclusion, we are going to look at some global actions against marine littering. Please, the next slide. Okay, so quickly, for us to be able to develop a good mechanism to end marine litter, the United Nations Environment Program have developed the Global Partnership on Marine Litter. The Global Partnership on Marine Litter is a stakeholder partnership that brings together all actors working to prevent the microplastics and also develop that framework to be able to help us curb marine litter. So the UNEP has developed that global partnership on marine litter, where you can check on them for unep.org. When you check on them, they have a lot of strategies for us to be able to do. So the United Nations is doing their part to end plastic waste. Also, we have the Honolulu Strategy. In 2011, at the International Marine Litter Conference, they developed the Honolulu Strategy. The Honolulu Strategy is having set 3 goals, with the goal A is having 7 strategies. So the goal B is having 6 strategies, and the goal C is also having 6 strategies. These strategies go about to be able to help us develop a framework that will help us end marine litter. The Honolulu Strategy do not come to rule out the municipal or the local government actions towards marine litter. No, they bring to us a coordination or an integration between policymakers, whereby we can learn from their framework to be able to better our approach towards curbing marine litter. That is, the Honolulu strategies are planning to for redefining sector-specific programs. So when you talk about, let's say, municipal actions towards marine litter, the strategy is there to guide us to be able to develop a very good framework, or in our local government, to be able to develop other frameworks that can be able to end local marine litter in our various places. The next one that we will talk about is the Driver Pressure State Impact Response Framework. The Driver Pressure State Impact Framework is an environmental framework that you can further look into them. Because of time, I wouldn't be able to go into them. You can further look at it because it is one of the framework that gives us the driving force, the pressure force, the state, and the response and the impact. Please, can you go back to the next slide? When we look at this framework, it will be able to guide our approach towards marine litter. The last one is the blue economy. We should not see the oceans as a source of food only, or we should not see marine litter as a problem only, but marine litter is also a place for us to be able to revamp and do well for the next generation. We could be able to develop several ideas concerning marine waste or marine litter or single-use plastics that are being dumped into the marine environment. We could recycle them to become products that we can be able to trade with for economic purposes. So this is the end of my presentation. I think my time is up. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Adu Mesa Jr. We are so glad for your presentation, and that was such an informative session. I hope everyone could take out as much as possible in this. Moving on with the next speaker, unfortunately, Mr. Darian Andres Castro could not be here with us due to some technical issues. So we are moving on with the next session for the webinar. That is, during this time, you could maybe allow yourselves to network with each other and just, share your experiences and share your stories on how you're involved with the ocean work, or what your action plans involve, and what inspires you and everything. Do we have any volunteers? Okay. We do have another event plan, another informative session plan for you at this time. Meera, could you take us through it?
Yes, of course. For a minute.
So we have Earth Advocacy Youth as our one of our partners, they have come up with a ocean summit, and we definitely want to make that an action plan, and we want to take it forward, and we hope you could join that ocean summit that is going to be happening on the in the month of September. So we will be sharing a presentation on that. Meera, are you able to share your screen?
Please allow me to share screen first. Sakshi,
Yes.
would you?
Yes. You should be able to share screen now.
Hi everyone, my name is Hannah Begovic, and I hope that you have really enjoyed today's webinar on World Oceans Day. I wanted to use this opportunity to just share some exciting things that are coming up in August and September. So a global group of young changemakers are organizing the Youth for Oceans Digital Summit, an international and purely action-based summit for youth aged 18 to 35. This summit is an event organized as part of Youth for Our Planet in partnership with Earth Advocacy Youth, Reserva de Youth Land Trust, and others. And this summit, planned for September 3rd to 5th of this year,
it's not very audible out here.
Facilitate a space where young change makers can co-build bold actions and campaigns to promote the protection of the world's oceans in the CBD COP, the Climate COP, and the High Seas Treaty. The summit has an Earth-centered foundation, which means that the campaigns and actions will be tailored to 1, defend the intrinsic rights of the world's oceans to exist, thrive, flourish, and regenerate their vital cycles, and 2, ensure that the fundamental and complex role of oceans in biodiversity and climate is recognized in these coming global agreements and gatherings. If you would like to learn more, attend the summit, offer your time and expertise, or partner up with us, please email us at hello@earthadvocacy-youth.org.
Thank you so much for that, Meera. If anybody is interested to take this momentum forward and carry forward the momentum and converting this into an action plan, please do join the Ocean Summit Ocean Summit, and we will be sharing the details of all the summit and who contact person on your mails while you receive your participation certificates. I hope all of you can join the same. So moving on, we have our next session for the webinar. Sahara, why don't you take us through it?
Oh, yeah, sure. Just a moment. Okay, the next session we have is Marine Protected Areas and High Seas Treaty. And I'd like to announce the speaker, which is Hannah Ruth. She has been selected to represent the United Kingdom as a part of the High Seas Alliance Youth Ambassador Program for 2021 to 2022, graduating from the University of York with a distinction in MSc Marine Environmental Management. She is pursuing her career, combining her passion for both marine conservation and science communication. Hannah was selected as a South African shark conservancy woman in shark science scholar, which helped expand her research on sharks. Hannah is a marine biologist, science communicator specializing in shark science with experience of working internationally. She is passionate about using storytelling to draw attention to important conservation messages in this ever-changing world. Hannah enjoys using a range of media from photography and film to writing and public speaking to share the tales of the natural world. Hannah is currently working in fisheries policy and management in the United Kingdom, as well as a freelance environmental journalist, photographer, filmmaker, and science communicator.
Unfortunately, we don't have the panelists joining us here live, but we do have a recorded version of her session. We will be taking questions for this particular speaker, and we will be forwarding it to the speaker's email. So please do drop in your questions for this particular speaker.
Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to speak to you all today about marine protected areas and the high seas. I'm very sorry I can't be there today to do it live in person. I would love the opportunity to do that and have a discussion about what I'm going to discuss with you in more detail over the next sort of 10 to 15 minutes. But unfortunately, there's been a scheduling clash, so I can't do that today, but I would love to in the future. So my name is Hannah Rudd. I'm a marine scientist and science communicator based in the UK. I volunteer with UK Youth for Nature, so that's how I'm involved with the Youth for Our Planet network, and I'm also a High Seas Alliance ambassador, which is really important for the High Seas Treaty and empowering youth voices throughout treaty negotiations that will be taking place this year. So I'll get more into that in a little bit more detail shortly after we discuss some other aspects of ocean policy and ocean management. But I just want to start off by saying that the ocean is an incredibly important part of our lives, our global community. It connects all of us. We're all intrinsically linked to it through a range of different ecosystem services that it delivers. Whether you spend no time at all from the ocean, whether you're miles and miles away from it, you are connected to it through the air that we breathe. Predominantly, everyone needs to breathe, right? And every second breath that you take is produced by the ocean. So that's a pretty fundamental reason, in my view at least, to protect it. And then you have a range of different ecosystem services that vary depending on where you are as to how important they are to you. So, for example, there's over 1 billion people that will depend on the ocean for the food that they eat. So it's primarily responsible for delivering their nutritional needs. There's other communities that are highly dependent on it for cultural and spiritual significance. And then there's also, for example, tourism sectors, the economy. People rely on it for their jobs, their livelihoods, recreational uses. There's a range of different ecosystem services that I'm sure you're all very familiar with. Things like coastal resilience as well, climate change mitigation, all these different things that we're really going to rely on as we live in this changing planet that we've created. So moving on, 2021, I'm going to call it an environmental super year. There's a lot going on in terms of global environmental policy over the next we're halfway through it now, but over the next couple of months and going into the next decade. So I'm sure you'll all be aware that the G7 is happening right now, with climate change being sort of front and center of that. It started on Friday, I believe. And then we also have the UN Convention on Biological Diversity, which is hopefully going to take place, COVID allowing. And then this summer, the High Seas Treaty, which is also known as the BBNJ Treaty, Marine Biodiversity Beyond National Jurisdiction Treaty. And then I believe it's being launched on Tuesday, which is World Ocean Day. We have the beginning of the UN Decade on Ocean Ecosystem Restoration. So there's a lot of big ticket items here for environmental policy, but in terms of public awareness, I would say, and maybe you disagree with me, but I would say that G7 is up there. Everyone knows a lot about it. It's in the press a lot. The UN Convention on Biological Diversity is a bit lukewarm. Some people know about it, other people don't. The High Seas Treaty, almost everyone you speak to, no one has an understanding or kind of awareness of what's going on. And when you consider that this treaty will be covering over half of our planet's surface area, that's quite a significant piece of legislation, piece of global agreement that's going to go through. So it's really important to improve ocean education, excuse me, ocean awareness, and empower people to know more about these big decisions that are being made, because this treaty is going to govern our ocean and how we monitor and manage biodiversity within it predominantly for the foreseeable future. So it's really important that we get it right. So before going into before going into more detail about marine protected areas and the High Seas Treaty, I'm sure many of you will be aware that the state of our seas has deteriorated substantially over the last few decades. We have warming and acidifying oceans and seas thanks to climate change. Sea levels are rising as well. I mean, ocean acidification and warming sea surface temperatures are incredibly problematic for particular ecosystems around the world, the most famous one being coral reefs, as corals are highly sensitive to changes in their environment. And it's just going to massively reduce habitat diversity and species diversity, and it could be hugely problematic. And then we have other issues such as pollution. Everyone will be aware of the plastic crisis now. 8 million metric tons are thought to be pumped into the ocean every year, but I'm sure it is much, much greater, and that threatens wildlife through entanglements, ingestion. It's really not a nice picture. And then we have other types of pollution as well, depending on where you are. Agricultural runoff and sewage, for example, but also shipping pollution, oil disasters. There's a range of different pollution incidences that can take place either locally or globally, and that can have huge impacts on marine wildlife. Overfishing is sort of the elephant in the room, because we obviously need fish to eat, but as our dietary choices as a planet change, and as the demographics of change, and our global population is rising, demand for certain fish products, and it's predominantly the same species, it's only a handful across the planet, is increasing, and as our technology advances, the fishing industry is getting increasingly better at targeting species, and being able to just wipe enormous shoals out, sort of the size of football pitches in some cases, but then they're not so great at avoiding the bycatch, which is a huge problem for things like cetaceans and sharks, turtles, other marine wildlife as well. So yeah, that's another big one. Disturbance as well, disturbance and coastal squeeze, I'm just going to put into the same bracket, because essentially, as more people frequent the coast, everyone loves a lovely sea view. I'm looking at one right now. There's a need for more development by the coast. This puts more pressure on the land by the coast. More people are frequenting the water, and increasing disturbance to species that maybe live within coastal ecosystems or inshore ecosystems. So that can be problematic. So for example, if nesting turtles, for example, different places around the world, when tourists are on the beach, they maybe don't know about what's happening, they could disturb the nesting turtles, which is an issue. And again, very similar with things like cetaceans, when you're whale watching and dolphin watching, and boat traffic can be hugely problematic there too. And then we have other exploitation of other marine resources as well, such as deep sea mining, which is quite a hot topic right now, also going under the radar. And yeah, for a range of reasons, that is, in my view at least, a really detrimental thing to do to our planet. We know so little about our ocean, yet let alone the deep sea. We have no idea in terms of what species damage we're doing by exploiting that part of the ocean before we've even had a chance to understand it. Not to mention that we also think there could be huge climate change implications for disturbing the seabed. But anyway, I've talked and rambled on quite a lot actually about the state of our seas, but I'm sure you know quite a lot about all of that anyway, and I'm happy to answer any questions in more detail because I am running short for time. So we have all these issues, but what are we going to do to protect it? Excuse me. So marine protected areas work very similarly to what you may see on land in terms of natural wilderness areas, national parks, that kind of thing. And this is a definition from the United Nations that you can see on your screen now, and it says marine protected areas involve the protective management of natural areas according to predefined management objectives. MPAs can be conserved for a number of reasons, including economic resources, biodiversity conservation, and species protection. They are created by delineating zones with permitted and non-permitted users within that zone. So it's really important to remember, I think, that marine protected area does not mean that no extractive activity will take place within there. There are no-take zones, for example, where they tend to be more highly managed and no human activity can take place within them, unless it's sometimes things like tourism can. But generally speaking, for example, here in the UK, a recent study found that 98% of offshore marine protected areas still have bottom trawling taking place within them. It's often common to see pelagic trawlers going through marine protected areas, and the reason for that is that they tend to be, here in the UK at least, designated based on their features, and many of those features lie on the seabed. So long as the activity that's taking place doesn't disturb the seabed, then they can still go ahead. So there's some controversy around whether or not that should happen, and in the interest of time, I can't go too much into those details. But in essence, it can be quite difficult, because if you're a dolphin or a whale or a shark, you're not going to know where you're protected in one place and you're not protected in another, or where you should hang out to not become bycatch, for example. So it is a difficult decision to make, and it's obviously not a one-size-fits-all approach. What works in one section of coast will probably not work even 10 kilometers down the road, for example. There could be that many differences. That's a little bit of an extreme example, but it could be possible in some parts of the world. So yes, they're a great management tool, but they're not robust yet, and they do have many pros and cons that managers and policymakers need to go through. So we've decided that marine protected areas globally is something that we need to push for to give our ocean the chance to recover from our activities and really sustain a healthy future for it. So scientists have predicted that by 2030, we need to protect at least 30% of our ocean to give it a chance, basically. If we don't protect that much, we could have issues with recovery rates, for example, and it may not have the best climate resilience, and it may not mitigate enough against impacts like overfishing. So currently 7.5% of the world's oceans are protected. So we've missed the 2020 target of 10% protected. So there's quite a lot of protecting to do in the next sort of 10 years, which is, an exciting time, but we have to make sure that they're not just lines on a map, and that those protections mean something. Because only 2% is strongly protected from destructive or extractive activities. So they're the highly protected marine areas, or the no-take zones I was talking about earlier on. So yes, there's a long way to go, and the 30% by 2030 ties in with the High Seas Treaty particularly well, which I'm going to go on to in a moment. But I do want to stress here the importance of co-partnership and co-management with marine protected areas. As I was saying earlier on, they have to be designated on a case-by-case basis, because the ocean is so, particularly coastal and inshore waters, are so well used by a range of different stakeholders. And just by saying, I'm going to cut off this bit and you can't use it, could have catastrophic implications for people's livelihoods, or their socioeconomic benefits that they receive. So it's really important to work with different stakeholders and try and find a solution that ticks as many boxes as possible. So there could be some kind of agreement about, you're allowed to go here, but you're not allowed to go there, and you're allowed to fish at this time of year, but you're not allowed to fish at other times. You can't use this gear, you can use that gear. All these different elements have to be discussed. I appreciate that I'm throwing a lot of information at you in perhaps not the best coherent manner right now. So if you do have any questions, please do let me know, because there is a lot to consider here. So just wrapping up what this is really about. What are the high seas? Now, the high seas is defined as all parts of the mass of salt water surrounding the globe that are not part of the territorial sea or internal waters of a state. They actually massively comprise 95% of living space on Earth, which blows my mind every time I read it. And they cover almost 50% of the planet's surface. So if you've ever taken a plane, for example, for me at least, here in the UK, if I ever look out the window when I'm going somewhere, I'm often traveling over the ocean. So it's a huge scope of our planet, and it belongs to both everyone and no one. So this is why many countries haven't wanted to sort of touch its management before, because it's the tragedy of the commons, because we all have rights to it, but at the same time we don't have the right to say what should and shouldn't go on within there at the moment. The boundary is essentially beyond every country's area of national jurisdiction. So that's 200 nautical miles beyond every coastal point. Beyond that, that's the high seas. So it's, as I've just said, it's a huge expanse of our planet. It's widely used, but it's not properly monitored or managed, or there's no enforcement of any kind at the moment going on there. But it is, of course, hugely important for migratory routes, for feeding grounds, for breeding grounds, for a range of species, from the great whales to even the eel, for example, that migrates from the Sargasso Sea all the way back to the UK to spawn. You know, there's huge value in this habitat, but it's becoming increasingly busy and increasingly exploited. Now, I'm not going to have time to go on and talk about the deep sea today. It's not something that is actually covered within the High Seas Treaty, deep sea mining, that will be covered by the International Seabed Authority at a later date. But essentially, a lot of the high seas are deep sea habitat. This is something that's very new to science. We're discovering new things all the time. There is so many discoveries that have to be made. In fact, they estimate that 2 million species remain to be discovered in the high seas, and most of these will be within the deep sea. So the question comes with, we already know what impact we've had on the ocean, or at least we are beginning to understand the impact we've had on the ocean. Why would we then want to go and disrupt and disturb an ecosystem that we have very little understanding of it? It's highly complex, and yet people want to drill it and mine it. It doesn't make much sense to me, but there we go. That's going on. So the High Seas Treaty, what is it? I'm very conscious that I've run quite considerably over time. So the High Seas Treaty is also known as Biodiversity Beyond National Jurisdiction, or the BBNJ Treaty. and it seeks to address the biodiversity monitoring and protection within the high seas gaps that UNCLOS currently doesn't, which is the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea. Sorry, I thought I was going to forget that, which is the current guiding framework. So it's really important to say that this treaty is just a framework at the moment. It won't actually put the measures in place for the monitoring, the management, the enforcement. All of those different things will need to be decided after the treaty, but this is just the initial framework. And what we're looking for here is a commitment to 30% of the ocean protected by 2030. The high seas has so many great potential sites for ocean protection, like the Sargasso Sea that I just mentioned, like the White Shark Cafe off the western coast of the United States, for example. Huge ranges of potential places that would be great to become protected. It also seeks to make sure that there's environmental impact assessments are comprehensive and that they take into account all impacts on the environment and subsequent species. So that's for activities like deep sea mining, for example. And as well as that, it wants to make sure that there is a global decision-making body, such as the Conference of the Parties, so COP, that we see for so many other environmental treaties, so that this is kept at the forefront and it's continually discussed and managed and monitored by global parties, whoever signs up to it. I don't know whether you can see my screen now because my PowerPoint has said that I'm not, but hopefully that was okay. Sorry about that. I don't know what happened there. But yes, anyway, how can you help? So it's really important, I know I'm coming up for the 20-minute mark now, that we get as much support for the BBNJ as possible, the High Seas Treaty. So please write to your government urging to support a strong High Seas Treaty, communicate online through your social media networks, particularly on Tuesday because it's Global Oceans Day, World Ocean Day. Notice we've dropped the S now because it is one ocean, we are all connected. And continually learn, come to presentations like this one and this great webinar event that you're joining now. Talk to friends, family, learn as much as you possibly can about the high seas and get the conversation going. I appreciate I've thrown a hell of a lot of information at you today. Very quick run through. So if you have any questions at all, please do not hesitate to get into contact with me. That is my email, hannah.eswarad@outlook.com. But you can also get in contact with me on Instagram at Hannah Explores Wild, and I'm also available on Twitter at Hannah S. Rudd. I just want to leave you with this quote from Dr. Sylvia Earle: "No water, no life, no blue, no green." In essence, that says everything I've been trying to say today. That without the ocean, without a strong and resilient and healthy marine life, biodiversity, marine environment, our life as we know it will cease to exist. That may sound bold, that may sound alarming and scary, and it is, but it's not an overestimate, sorry, to say that. So it's really important that we get this right, and it's fantastic that there's people like you sat in the audience today eager to learn more about it. So yes, thank you so much for listening. Any questions, please let me know, and I'm optimistic about the future. It's now or never, and it seems like everyone is getting on board, so absolutely fantastic. And thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of the event.
Thank you so much. And to the participants, please do feel free to send us your questions you have for this speaker. We will definitely have them answered through mail or any possible communication. Mira, can we move on to the next session? Great. The final panelist for the webinar is Mr. Sri Chakra Pranav Tamrapalli, who will be talking about the citizen science and involvement in marine conservation. Pranav Tamrapalli has founded East Coast Conservation Team to work on conservation of marine and terrestrial ecosystems in Andhra Pradesh, India. He initiated Intertidal Biodiversity of Andhra Pradesh project to collect data of intertidal biodiversity and started shore walks to educate and engage citizens in collecting data on rocky and sandy shores. He has also initiated a project on marine litter collection and upcycling, a collaboration with Green Wave Environmental Solutions. Pranav Tamrapalli has also coordinated a project on landing of branches like sharks and rays in Vishakhapatnam to ascertain their local status and trends of fishing and educating fishermen on the stoppage of target killing of such elusive species. Pranav has also coordinated several projects, including the identification of threatened mammals and conservation of fishing cats by way of research, education, and community involvement. We can't wait to hear what you have to say for us, Mr. Pranav. This platform's all yours.
So should I be sharing the screen, or will you be changing the slides?
No, we will be changing the slides.
Okay, sure. So yeah, I just want to repeat some of the things that previous speakers already said. By the way, you can call me Pranav, everyone. As many people have already told about the pollution of marine ecosystems and what kind of treaties are being done, etc., etc. I want to point out the marine ecosystems that are around us, okay, especially in India and also around the world, okay. What are the ecosystems that come into your mind when you say marine ecosystems? There is open oceans, and there are coral reefs, and even mangrove ecosystem comes under marine ecosystem actually, because it has tidal influence on them, and there is estuaries which have both influence of oceans and also rivers into them. So all these ecosystems, all these different ecosystems come under marine ecosystems, and conservation has to happen in all these ecosystems, because as you know, each ecosystem has its own importance. Like coral reefs occupy only 0.5% or something like that of the entire ocean, but they contain 25% of the biodiversity that is in the ocean. And even mangroves are the highest productive marine ecosystems in the world. Like the amount of production that they do, the amount of organic materials that come out of mangrove ecosystem, and the amount of oxygen released is pretty high. As some of you might have already heard, an acre of mangrove forest can release more than 5 times than an acre of normal tropical forest. And also, as one of the previous speakers has pointed out, phytoplankton is responsible for most of the oxygen in our atmosphere actually. So more than 50% of what we see here is oxygen here is because of phytoplankton, etc. So as you know, we have a lot of biodiversity around us. So as researchers and conservationists, we are doing something about it. But is that enough? Of course, what we are doing is not enough, because the number of people that are doing research and conservation projects are very less. And we always need the help of regular citizens like you guys. Even though if you are not in the field, while you're going for beach, or while you're doing something else, you can always collect data and help us in it. So that is what my presentation is all about. Is about citizen science and para-ecologist involvement in marine conservation. Slide. So what is citizen science? So as you can see here, citizen science is practice of involving and collaborating with public in the research to increase scientific knowledge. As you know, general public come across a lot of wildlife or marine life on a regular basis. Some people might come across a dead puffer fish on the beach. Some people can come across a dead dolphin. Some people can come across an anemone. So, but all these findings by regular people go unnoticed. So that is why citizen science is very important. So primarily what we are doing is involving citizens in collecting data and providing knowledge to citizens and creating awareness to them. Yeah. So in what aspects can the citizens be involved? So there are many marine areas that regular citizens go on a regular basis, like beaches, and sometimes beaches also have rocky shores on them, sometimes sandy shores. So in these rocky shores and sandy shores, during low tide, we always see a lot of organisms on them. Like it may vary from small shells like you see in the photo, and sometimes you can see animals that are as big as an eel. Recently, we have come across a few species of eels in the shores itself, which are pretty much alive. So you can actually see everything like that. So, but when you see that, you just notice it, you smile at it, and you go back. Now you can actually do something about it. Next slide, please. How to implement citizen science? That's what we are trying to do. We usually conduct shore walks on weekends. We take people to rocky shores and sandy shores during low tide. And what happens in low tide is the water goes back a few meters and it forms pools in the rocks and it forms water bodies in the rocks. And even some organisms are still stuck in these water bodies and still live in it and feed in it until the water comes back in the next tide. Some of you might already know about tides. We have tides for every 6 hours. 6 hours will be high tide, 6 hours low tide, and tides will be changing for every 6 hours. During high tide, water comes forward, and during low tide, water goes back. So in these pools, you can see various organisms. So in these walks that you see here, we educate people on what those organisms are and how can they collect data about these organisms. Like we use an application called iNaturalist. It is an open source application. You can find it in Android Play Store and also in Apple Store. So you can install it, and the project that we have started is Untitled Biodiversity of Andhra Pradesh. But I can see that many viewers here are also from Mumbai. So there is also a project called Marine Life of Mumbai, which is being run by Coastal Conservation Foundation. You can join their project and contribute over there. There are my friends over there like Shonak Modi and Abhishek and other people who are working on similar things in Mumbai. So you can actually take photo of whatever organisms that you see and upload in iNaturalist. Even though if you don't know anything about it, there are some experts in there who can help you out in identifying it, and they'll add it to the list they have. So the organisms that you take photo might or might not be recorded before, or might not be recorded in this region before. So it will be a discovery of yours. So it will be so interesting to have your own discovery, right? So start going to the shows, take photos and upload into iNaturalist, and help our scientific community too, because we cannot be everywhere. Citizens can be everywhere, and you guys can help us. As you can see, hammerhead sharks on the right. This is the scene in Visakhapatnam Harbor. Hammerhead sharks are threatened with extinction. Some species is vulnerable, and another one is near threatened. But even there, with the fundings we have and with the team we have, we cannot be in every harbor every time. So whenever you go to a fishing harbor or some place to buy fish, take a look. If you see any endangered animals and endangered fishes like this, take a photo, inform to people like us. So that will be a great data addition, because as you know, 40% of elasmobranchs in the sense, they are sharks and rays. You can say bone, they are fishes without true bone. So 40% of them are endangered or going extinct. So having data on them is very crucial at this point of time. So you start uploading that too. So how do we implement citizen science in marine research and conservation? We involve citizens, we'll take them to walks, we'll make them collect the data, and these data can be used in different ways. Like in the rocky shores, as you see here, they are seeing different animals. They are getting encouraged. They'll do the same thing without us next time. They'll collect more data, and all this go to the project. And whenever there is a project or something destructive happening to that shore, and people know that there are some animals there, probably some endangered animals also in those shores, and those shores shouldn't be harmed. So there should be some proof, right, that there are animals there, and doing that specific industrial project in that area will damage their life, etc., etc. That is when this data comes in handy. This data can be provided, all the data that you guys, citizens, have collected can be provided, and we can use that for conservation of the area. Similar with the sharks, as you see, if you have enough data on how many sharks are getting caught on a daily basis, which species are getting caught, then we can actually do something about it. We can actually make it legal to protect the species, and make it illegal to overfish them or fish them in the first place. So there are many ways that we can use citizen science like this. Next slide. Yeah, as you can see here, these are some of the observations that were added by some citizens in our project. You can see anemones, starfishes, and some shells, and also a very interesting organism called hydroid, which looks like a plant, but actually it's not a plant, it's an animal. So you can see all these interesting things once you step out and go into the beaches. If you are from the West Coast, join CCF and Marine Life of Mumbai. If you are from East Coast, you can always join us and learn more about them. If you're in East Coast of India, that's what my organization name is, East Coast Conservation Team. I'll be dropping the mail of my organization down here after the presentation, so that you can drop in any questions, or if you want to volunteer here or work with conservation, etc. So next slide. So how does it help? So as I told you already how it helps in many ways. And as researchers, we have a proper plan for our projects. Like we plan to go at specific place to specific time to collect data, etc., etc. But what happens is we might miss out on some places. We cannot be everywhere. So this is something that I got a call from a person who came to our walks. So a person who came to our walks have given contact to another person who actually contacted us, saying that we saw a dead turtle on the beach. So please come and take a look. We thought it's a olive ridley turtle as usual, because it's olive ridley nesting time around that time. So I thought it will be an olive ridley turtle, and I have to inform forest department once I take measurement of it. But once I went there, it turned out to be a green sea turtle. Green sea turtles are not very common in Andhra Pradesh. There are passerbys, but no nests, etc. were seen. It's a dead specimen we found. So this data is very crucial, and it was collected because of help of citizens. So citizen science is very important in conservation. Next slide. So let's talk about para-ecologists. So does anyone here know about para-ecologists? Have you heard about the term before? You can drop your text on the chat if you have. So here there's information on who is called para-ecologist. A person who is local to an area and is well versed in the ecology of this neighborhood and is trained to collect data in absence of researcher or scientist. So this may look very similar to the topic that we have discussed before, that is citizen science. But usually most of the people who participate in citizen science are people who have fancy phones and who know how to use it and who are well educated, etc., etc. But para-ecologist can be anyone, a fisherman or a tribes person, or anyone who has enough interest to contribute for the research and conservation of marine life can be a para-ecologist. So, yeah, there are many examples of this para-ecologist, like how to actually, next slide please. Yeah, how to recognize and train para-ecologists. So what we usually do is we go out and do questionnaire surveys or have casual chats with people around these coasts, mostly fishermen and other people who wander around these areas. They have traditional ecological knowledge, as their community has been fishing from a few centuries. So with this traditional ecological knowledge, they can provide us a lot of information. And we always get to them if they are interested. We tell them what different animals that they see are called in English, and more scientific facts about them. And if they see any of them, how to collect data and how to help us out, and all these things. So in the absence of researchers also, they can collect data. If I'm not here and I went to give presentation in some other state or some other country in the sense, then they cannot just call me and say, please collect the data. I saw some dead whale over here. It's not possible. I cannot go and collect data on it. So at that point, he'll be the person who takes responsibility for that, and he'll collect the data and give to us when we come back. So yeah, next slide please. Yeah, how are they helpful in research and conservation? Both the photos that you see here are informations that are based on the information that we got from para-ecologists, like different fishermen that we have interacted in different areas. The animal that you see on the left is finless porpoise. It's a marine mammal. We got information that a dead porpoise, they said that a dead dolphin was found. And this photo along with measurement was sent to us, and it turned out to be a porpoise. And that is a dead or alive record of porpoise in Andhra Pradesh after 15 years. So para-ecology is very, very much useful in knowing which animals are present around the coast or in the oceans. And the photo that you see on the right is a whale shark. So a whale shark was accidentally caught by this fisherman, but it was still alive while they brought it to the shore. As they have contacted people like us and other organizations in our city, they came to know that it's a whale shark and it is protected animal. So they left it back. So having contacts with these people and teaching them and involving them in conservation is very much important. Para-ecologists are very much important in conservation of marine life. Next slide, please. Next slide. Yeah, as my topic states, how can citizens be involved in marine conservation? Previously, I spoke about citizen science, like how citizens can be involved in research or data collection. But how can they actually be involved in conservation is the thing that we'll be talking now. Next slide. So yeah, here you can see cleanup drive, marine cleanup drive that our organization has done, and all the people that are around me, other than few teammates, are citizens who came to help out in cleaning of beach. I know many of these initiatives are happening around the country. More people have to come forward after getting awareness. And another thing I have to point out is, where are you disposing of these plastics after doing cleanups? Where are you actually doing that? That's very important, because not all municipalities are doing recycling. Not everyone is upcycling. Not everyone is reusing these things. So do your background check on what's happening to your plastic that you have collected, and you thought that you are saving marine life. Because in many places, even in the city that I live in, if I give the trash that I've collected to the municipality, it will end up in ocean again. So it's always better to know whom to give and how to save yourself and save the oceans from the plastic trash that you collect. So creating awareness in the citizens and involving them in threats like plastic and oil spillage, etc., that happen on a regular basis is very important. And this is how citizens will be helpful in conservation. Next slide. Sometimes this is not enough, like awareness is not enough. People expect something when they do something, even if it's for their own good. So this is an example from Platypus Escapes. They are a diving company who are currently in Andamans, but previously worked in Andhra Pradesh. So Platypus Escapes does a really cool job. They are diving company, so they take people for diving, that's one thing. And they give their dive for free if you collect a bag full of plastic while you're diving in the ocean. Isn't that fantastic? That's incentivizing. Usually a dive costs around 3,000 to 5,000, I guess. So they are giving it away for collection of one bag full of plastic. This is one way of incentivizing people to do something good about conserving marine life. So I should really appreciate Platypus Escapes for that, and Subhash and team. Next slide. As you know, building a network of citizens around this area. As you previously saw, we have collected trash. Citizens have collected trash around with us. So there are some people who are helping us in upcycling the trash. Like the picture that you see on the extreme left is actually ghost net and other net material that is lying waste in the oceans. These are refined by many of the volunteers and citizens, and later it is made into the bracelet that you see in the third slide. And the second photo that you see here, our team is actually explaining the fishermen not to dispose the plastic when they are weaving these nets. Weaving these nets and dispose them in a container that we give. So we provided them with many containers, and they are disposing the trash in them instead of directly in the ocean. And yeah, next one. So everyone is involving in actually removing the trash there and upcycling it into many items, as you see here. And these items are being sold. The bracelets and other things are being manufactured and sold by companies like Green Waves Environmental Solutions, who is our partnering company, and it's being sold. And the money that we get will be again used in the conservation field. So this is how you do it. So thank you for the opportunity. Hope this helps, and hope many citizens will be involved in marine conservation after seeing this. If you have any questions about this presentation, you can always mail in the mail ID that I have given in the slide. And if you are looking for volunteer opportunities in India, in Andhra Pradesh, they are available with our organization. So you can always volunteer for marine conservation, and also we have some terrestrial programs. And you can always check out our you can always check out our social media to know more about our organization. I'll drop out the name of our organization and the email ID in the chat. So you can contact us whenever you want.
Thank you so much for such an insightful session, Mr. Pranav. I'm sure many participants here would be interested in joining your organization and contributing in your works. So glad to see people are still getting involved and doing so much like you, and you still continue to inspire people. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
We now have Mr. Duran back. Mr. Duran Andres Castoricald will be talking about Galapagos Island and long-scale fishing. Duran Andres is the founder of Radio Podcast and Wings to Amazon project. He is an island innovation ambassador and a member of Fridays for Future Movement. He was also a delegate for MOC COP26 and researcher in Ecuador, and Ecuador leader of Hay Foundation from UNICEF Caribbean. Duran is a biologist and researcher of Pontifical Catholic University of Ecuador. He has worked as an indigenous communities activist in the Amazon River. He has worked in scientific projects such as rainforest monitoring in Biosphere Reserve at the Yasuni National Park with Dr. Renato Valencia and Catalina Quintana. Mr. Duran, you can speak now. The platform is all yours.
Hi everybody. Thank you so much for this space, especially for this organization. I think it's so important to promote all of these ideas in the youth. So well, right now I want to explain more about what happened.
Patio oceánico modificado.
What happened right now, especially with the Galapagos Islands. Galapagos Islands is a archipelago that right now are in danger for many ways. The first way is, for example, the high-scale fishing, the massive fishing, not only in international level, even exists a pressure from our continent, especially from my country, Ecuador, with this kind of problems. Another problem is the ecotourism without regulation that exists. Even many people don't understand what's the consequences of a tourism that don't have enough regulations with the, for example, the trespasses distance between the species that live in this kind of ecosystems that are so fragile. Can help me with, thank you. So yeah, the question in this presentation is the following: how about the Galapagos Islands and protection policies? Galapagos Islands, it's part of the territory of Ecuador. So basically, the Galapagos Islands is the government of Ecuador too. In that government, in that country, we have some regulations and policies in the constitution or Magna Letter, especially in the environmental protection, the good being, the good living, or another kind of policies that protect the vulnerable groups and in the same time protect the natural resources, even scientific resources and biological resources like Galapagos Island is. Thank you. So well, we have a policy of protection that we have since we continued the Convention Agreement. But in this Convention Agreement, we modified the exclusive economic zone, that it's the limits between the international seas and the Galapagos Islands, and even the natural reserve of Galapagos. In this ecosystem, we can see many such great biodiversity of species that need to be protected by the government of Ecuador, and even this reserve, this territory is considered a natural patrimony for the humanity by UNESCO. So basically, it's a responsibility not only national, even international level, to protect these kind of reserves. But we had many problems with the Chinese government and Ecuadorian government too. So it's so ironic to have that kind of problems about the fishing or high-scale fishing in own territory. So we will continue with the next slide, please. And we can see the timeline of all of these conflicts at international level with the Chinese government. The first problem began with 2012 with the Convention Agreement. We will have a territory in the sea, international sea, that was limited with the Galapagos Islands and the continental seas, especially with the territory of Ecuador, like Manabí, the province of Manabí, and other territories in Guayas, province of Guayas, all the coast side of the Ecuador, and the Galapagos Islands are considered Ecuadorian territory, with some agreements with international level with United States, for example. But we had that limits in our territory. But what happened right now? Since 2012, we had a Convention Agreement with, especially with this deal, the international seas. And right now, the exclusive economic zone of Galapagos is just only 200 nautic miles. Is around the island, but that represent less territory in continental seas and even international seas for the island, and that is a great problem for this kind of hazards in the international seas with the fishing, and that is a real problem for example, initiatives like ecotourism, even the fishing industry in the national level. In 2017, we had a problem with the Chinese ships or authorities, especially the National Navy, arrested the Chinese ships with about 200 tons of shark meat and another species of fishes. That was an incredible danger for the biodiversity and even the patrimony, natural patrimony or natural capital for our natural reserve, and even for the humanity, because we need to understand that these kind of ecosystems in islands, it's so fragile because they're endemism. The endemism meaning that these species are unique and don't exist only in these territories and not in another territories. And even in these territories, like for example, islands, we can see production, primary production of in the seas that allow the flow of the species around the world. you know, we can see, for example, the migration of whales or the migration of some tuna fishes around the Pacific Ocean. And that is very important, not only for the biodiversity, even for the economy, for the countries. And we don't have that balance. It's so complicated to keep the rhythm of the economy, especially with the fishing, for example. In 2020, so the last year with the COVID-19 pandemic, we had hundreds of Chinese ships in the limit of the exclusive economy zone of Galapagos. The National Navy Office and the Ministry of Defense detected these ships with irregular strategies, like, for example, duplicated permissions of the of navies in that territory. For example, existed ships without register or false ID of the ship in the international agreement. So basically, we especially our country had many problems to detect these ships for these strategies that, you know, are illegal, but, you know, sometimes when we don't have the radars and the system to detect these ships, it's so complicated to see that it's illegal or not. And that's the case in Ecuador. The ships without register even don't be weren't detected for the radar system. So basically, it's a great problem for the National Navy, and even it's another problem with, you know, any difficult situations like a narco trafficking in the region too. So basically, that's the reason, because even these kind of problems are putting in danger the biodiversity and even the economic system of the country. But we will explain more about what's the consequences in, for example, in general, in the humans and in the biodiversity, this kind of massive fishing for international countries, for example. And the next slide, please. So yeah, we can see the next strategies that these kind of ships in Chinese and even in the national territory used to, you know, get the fishes and even the sharks too. So if you can put. I think it's doesn't work. Oh, okay. Just pass the next slide, please. I can explain. So yeah, basically, this kind of fishing is, for example, with a column of knives that are, you know, integrated in the deep of water, in the deep of ocean. And that kind of strategies, you know, promote not only the death of fish species, even from the sharks. And the sharks are so important in these ecosystems because they are the predators, the main predators in these ecosystems, and regulate the balance in these ecosystems. So basically, it's real complicated, like for example, even in terrestrial ecosystems, like a rainforest, when we don't have a Panthera oncal, like a top predator, it's so complicated, for example, to see a balance in the water flow, in the herbivore, in the herbivory index, and, you know, the ecosystem start to destroy it for even for the people, for the herbivory animals. You know, it's the same thing in these kind of ecosystems in the water. And we can see in this, for example, in this figure, example of the, for example, the traffic web, because we are so, you know, we just know the pyramid, the food pyramid in the nature, but we can see that in the new research that pyramid don't exist literally. We can see a food web around these ecosystems when, for example, all these species depend of the rest of the species. For example, we can see the zooplankton. It's the main production in the seas for example, the feeding of some species of fishes and even mollusks and another invertebrates, for example. And especially we have in Galapagos a species of shark, the whale shark. This species of shark isn't carnivore animal, is a zooplankton eater, and it's very common, you know, to see these whale shark in the territory of Galapagos. But we have that problem with the death of these species, like that important species like a whale shark, with the conflict in the last year with the Chinese government. A white shark disappeared in that dates when the Chinese ships filled the coast of Galapagos. So technically, we can see that these changes are proportional of the, for example, the highest scale fishing, that it's a real problem not only with Chinese, even with Ecuador. And what's the solutions that we will have for this problem? Next slide, please. Thank you. Okay, so well, with the collaboration of scientists and researchers in the marine biodiversity in Ecuador and even at international level, registered for example, the distances and even the ways, the pathways that some species, important species of sharks and even fishes, you know, follow in each territories. And these researchers conclude that exists a pathway, a principal pathway between three islands. The Galapagos Islands is the first. The Mapelo Islands, it's part of Colombia or neighbor country, and the Cocos Island, that it's near to Costa Rica. So basically, we can see that it's very important to take a solution to protect this kind of highways or pathways that use these species, because it's very important and even affect in another ecosystems around the Pacific Ocean. For example, we can see that these can affect in a long term or a short term in territories like Asia, Pacific Islands, and even Hawaii too. And it's very important to see that this zone, it's so important to, you know, the flow of the species and the balance for the many countries in the biodiversity level. And in these graphics, we can see that since the high scale fishing existed, the amount of important species of sharks decreased. So we can see, for example, since 1990 to, for example, 2010, we can see a huge decrease in the abundance of these species. So we can see if for example, we just consider the effect of this kind of high-scale fishing, for example, in another years, we didn't have that cases so frequently, but right now with often with these more frequent cases of the high-scale fishing, we can see that these lines will decrease so well, and you know it's very dangerous for the biodiversity in general. Can you help me, please, with the next slide? So yeah, what's the message for this presentation? We need to consider that all the ecosystem depend on some species. We have the same problem with territories like Somalia in Africa, when the high-scale fishing for China, even another territories like United States, even Europe, UK, you know, get some resources in the marine biodiversity in that territory in Somalia. And right now, Somalia need to protect that because the amount of fishes with important economic importance are decreased with the you know day by day and year by year. And it's very important to see that the balance of these species, even we just, you know, for example, disappear a species of fish that have a real consequence in not only in the short term, even in a long term for the next generations. And it's very important to have a responsibility, take the responsibility and promote values of protection in our governments, because that's the key to protect the governments and the research that. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Darian. We would now like to move on to the next session of the webinar, that is the Q&A session. We have a couple of questions for the speakers. I'd like any of you to answer them. What's serious pollutants about marine pollution? Could any of the speakers please answer this question?
So what's the question? Is that for the viewers?
Yeah, the participants have asked this question. What serious pollutants about marine pollution? I think they're trying to ask what are the serious pollutions that cause marine pollution?
What are the sources, right?
Yes.
Yeah, there are many sources for marine pollution, as you guys know. The major source is industrial pollution. I mean, releasing the pollutants that are not treated properly by the industries. There are many laws of releasing the industrial pollutions, but no one actually follows them these days. So that is the one thing. And the second thing is sewage. As you know, that along with sewage, a lot of organic material also is released. And because of excessive organic materials, algal blooms are seen in many places. And these algal blooms cause anoxic conditions and mass deaths of a lot of animals. And the next thing is, as you know, oil spills and all these other things that happen. Because of oil spills, kilometers of surface of water is covered in oil, and the oxygen levels deplete in the waters. and many animals suffer because of that. So this is my opinion, and yeah, let's hear from other speakers also what they think about it.
Yes, Mr. Adu, you had your hand raised. Do you like to answer this question?
Yeah, there are two main sources of marine pollution. We have the land-based source and also the sea-based source. The land-based source is from the individual homes, and they have some substance like pollutants, clothing, pieces of broken glasses, and other ones. And also we have the sea-based that is, as the earlier presenter said, we have them the oil spillage, also fishing nets, on that is the sea-based one. So basically there are two main sources, the land-based and the sea-based. Thank you.
Thank you so much for answering those questions. We have another question. At which island in the Atlantic Ocean do the Eurasian and North American tectonic plates meet? It seems very technical. Does anybody want to answer this question?
The question again?
At which island in the Atlantic Ocean do the Eurasian and North American tectonic plates meet?
I don't have any idea.
Not a problem. I think we can get back to that question. So we have another question by Tanya. What are the measures taken to solve or conserve carbon cycle in the ocean? Would any of you like to answer that question? Darian, Pranav, and Adi.
Can you repeat me the question?
What are the measures taken to solve or conserve carbon cycle in the ocean?
Salt level or what? Excuse me, I couldn't hear.
Let me repeat that for you. What are the measures taken to solve or conserve carbon cycle in the ocean?
Oh, okay. So, well, to solve, for example, efficient flow of species in an international level, and even in in different ecosystems like the coral reefs that are the most important ecosystems, not only in the oceans, even in the earth in general, with the rainforest ecosystem, for example. It's necessary for in the first time protect natural reserves that are considered a refugee of species, endemic species, and key species that, for example, put the balance in the ecosystem. That's the case in Galapagos, and even it's that the case in another territories like Fiji Islands, for example, or Tonga Islands, that have a great biodiversity, and it's considered a hot spot of the species in fish and even in vertebrates, like at the coral reefs, for example. So that's the key. Protect that sites that have an importance in the biodiversity and the richness of the species, and have a primary production. The primary production is the result of the photosynthesis of the phytoplankton in the seas. So basically, that's the important to see. And to get that information, it's important, of course, to have research data, to have scientifics in the regions, and invest in that kind of areas in the scientific level. So yeah, basically it's that.
Thank you for answering that. We have one last question. Any of you can answer that question. If an organization wishes to aid in a movement for a better world, but they lack the funds to do so, where and how can the organization acquire aid?
Well, I can answer that question. I think it's in this condition right now with the COVID-19 pandemic, we had many problems, especially in our country, because we have many research projects in the marine reserves like Galapagos, Manabí, and even we have international reserves like in Mapelo and Cocos Islands. and was a was so difficult to continue that research, because we need special equipment to diving in that territories in the international seas, and in the same time it's very complicated to get that funds. But the solution for that kind of problems with the funds that we suffer, like our organizations and activism organizations like this, for example, and in the same time in the institutional organizations like my university, basically we need to get agreements with another institutions, and in the same time we can continue with that investment in that area, because the Ecuador and even the Galapagos Island, obviously is part of Ecuador, depend of the ecotourism. So if we know more about that, the ecology and the ecosystems and the protection and the conservation of these species, it's a great opportunity, a natural capital for us, for this sector. So yeah, we just do agreements with these institutions with our research objective, our research approach, and in the same time we can get a benefit for the society in general.
Thank you for answering that. Does any of the other speakers or panelists want to answer that question? Okay, thank you.
I would like to say they're talking about funding the conservation, right? How to fund conservation in a sustainable manner.
Yes.
So right now there are many agencies that actually fund some organizations, but as you know, most of these agencies will give only seed money to start the work. But to carry on, we need a sustainable business model. We have to raise our own funds to make it happen. So one of the ways that is coming up right now is blue carbon, like you can say carbon credits, as many people call it. So as you know, as I spoke previously about mangrove ecosystem, they actually provide 5 times more oxygen than regular terrestrial ecosystem, is what I told. So in the same way, more carbon is synced into the land by mangrove ecosystems. So mangrove ecosystems are also marine ecosystems, as you know, as they are on estuaries, and there's influence of sea in them. So these ecosystems, let me be clear about it. So as you know, mangroves has leaves and underwater roots, right? They have breathing roots. So what happens is, while they breathe through these roots, and while they do photosynthesis and release oxygen in the mornings, they also do respiration at nights and some other periods when they release carbon dioxide outside. So what happens is, while they do the respiration through roots, some mangrove plants respire through roots, not only through leaves. So what happens is they release the carbon dioxide into the water instead of into the air. So it will be suspended. And also all the organic matter that is produced, or all the leaves that is shed, will go directly into the water and will be mulched down and will be converted and sinked into the ground. So more carbon is sinked down instead of converting back into carbon dioxide after the tree's death. So a lot of carbon sink happens there. So there are many companies that are ready to offset their carbon. Like there are some airway companies that pollute a lot. A lot of pollution happens because of them. So they want to provide some money to organizations who actually plant and maintain these trees, which actually take out the carbon dioxide that they have polluted. So many companies are actually buying this. Okay, they call it carbon credit. So as they have credit, as they have released a lot of carbon dioxide into the environment, they have to they are planning to offset it. So carbon credits is something that is a future for getting money into the conservation. So that is one thing, and as many speakers have pointed out before, phytoplankton is a major source of oxygen, and it is also a major source of carbon sinking that many people don't talk about. That is something that can be monetized again, but many people have to look into it, how to do that. It's still a learning phase to many conservationists on how to make conservation economically viable.
Thank you for answering that question. I think we will be taking one last question. The question is, how does trash in ocean disappear? Would anybody like to answer that question?
Yeah, I can help you with that.
Go ahead.
Yeah, it's a good question, and it's the main problem that right now we have in a food situation, because it's the plastics have concentrations, different concentrations and combinations of hydrocarbons substance from the oil, of course. And in many cases, we have a it's incredible to talk about that, because, for example, we have a great biodiversity in species, but in the plastics, we have a diversity too of materials that, are exposed to different conditions. And with the time, these materials are destroyed during years and years. The PP plastics, for example, have a time of 1,000 of years to destroy it totally. So it's such great time. And but in the same time, that's not the main problem. The main problem is that the plastics are destroyed and are divided in microparticles. That is the microplastics and nanoplastics. And that, for example, that particles are traveled around the oceans, around the rivers too, because we must not to forget that it's a problem even in the riversides and even in the lakes, in the ponds, in the hydrological systems in the continental level. And that particles travel and follow around the strains of the rivers and go to the seas, to the oceans, and the biodiversity, accumulate these particles for the breeding, for the eating, the feeding, and in the same time, accumulate that particles. And in many cases, for example, in countries like in Philippines, we can see a higher, the highest index of mutations and disabilities for mutations, genetical mutations. And many people are related with this composition of water and these problems of some genetic diseases for the pollution of water with nanoplastics and microplastics. It's a great problem, we know about that, but the real problem is, for example, what about in the next years, in 10 years, 30 years? It's so complicated if we don't have the necessary to fight against this and stop it, because it's a problem that is a continuously, and we need a policies to protect that. Many countries do it so well, but other countries don't have policies for that material.
Thank you so much for answering that question, Mr. Darian. I think we've come to the end of that being said, we've come to the end of the session and the webinar. I would thank all the participants for being here, taking their time out on a Sunday and being here with us on this informative session. I thank all the panelists. And if the participants do have any questions for the panelists, we would request them to send them to us by email, and we will be surely to get them answered from the panelists. And you can, all the participants and all the whoever is interested can join the Youth for Our Planet movement by logging on to the details that is put on the chat section, that is www.youthfourourplanet.com/join the movement. And we would also request you to please sign the Ocean Declaration. We're just trying to amplify the voice as much as reach we can get to make this point, and I hope all of you can help us by signing it. If the link is shared in the chat section, and also please do help us get as many signatures as possible. The Ocean Declaration, you can find the Ocean Declaration on www.youthforourplanet.com/ocean declaration. Thank you everyone for being here. It was great having you all.
Nice session. Thank you for having us. Bye.
Thank you so much, Mr. Pranav. Thank you, Adu. Thank you, Mr. Adu. Thank you, Mr. Darian, for joining us.
Thank you, all of you.
Thank you all. Have a nice day.